And I think I have been asked to make a remark that CJ asked if she could make in her plenary this morning that she forgot because it was an add-on for her. Do you remember now? Because 3 other people have come to me with the same thing and said that could we make sure that everybody knows, and what CJ was going to say is, this is everybody's problem, that I am as white as they come, right? And she was asked if she said, can I say this is not an Aboriginal problem, this is everybody's problem? And I said, yes. So I'm just, on her behalf and on the behalf of other people who've asked me to say it, I'm saying it. Now, for this afternoon, it is my very great privilege to present 3 incredible young adults who, although I guess Myles, are you out of the young adult phase? Yeah, he is. The other, so CJ for that matter, oh well. 3 really special people who have worked very, very, very hard on the research that they're, and it's participatory action research that they are going to present to you. And I'm not going to steal any of their thunder other than to say this is Myles Himmelreich, CJ Lutke, and Emily Travis. Thank you.
All right, good afternoon. We are super excited to be presenting this to you. Before we get started, I just want to make a side note that after this presentation, there will be a coffee break, followed up by another session. But for the adults, us individuals with FASD, we will have our own question and answers break right after the coffee session, or after the coffee break. And it will be in the Georgia A room. So that way we can have time to go over the stuff that CJ, Emily, and I are going to be talking about in more detail, right? Because people are going to have questions, and so they can fight over who gets the microphone here. We'll have our own session where we get to take our own time and ask our own questions, okay? So let's get started. Lay of the land, preliminary results of a health survey with FASD, a whole body diagnosis. So learning objectives, understand why the survey was developed, review the highlights from the survey, understand FASD as a whole body diagnosis. The survey included 260 questions and 26 areas. We'll be presenting on 14 of those areas. That way keeps you excited about what about the other areas. So this is an ongoing preliminary survey. All right, so it's not a research paper, it's a preliminary survey, and so we will be mentioning that throughout because there is a difference. We will be keeping this open, and for those of you individuals out there diagnosed with FASD who haven't had an opportunity to fill out the survey, you can access it by going online. You can find the survey, or you can use the syllabus in the handouts. There's a connection in the syllabus to open up the survey, and you can fill it out there. All right. Again, if anyone has any questions, we'll be here to guide you in getting more information on the survey and how to fill it out. So this is a preliminary initial data. No portion of this presentation may be copied, reproduced, or used for any other purpose without the permission of the authors. Now, the authors are Emily, CJ, and myself. We came up with the idea, we came up with the questions, we did the research, we started asking our friends and family that we knew, and that's how we started going with this. So the authors are us 3, okay? Yay. So as we said, one of the things that we want to share with you is the review of the numbers in the survey, but also, too, that this is a full body diagnosis that we're talking about here. And why do we believe that? Well, a couple of years ago, actually, at this very conference, we were sitting at a table, and there's probably about, I'd say, 8 of us at the table, all living with FASD, and I shared with them that at the time I was going in for a hernia surgery. And someone said, oh, I've had a hernia. Someone else said, oh, I had 2. Someone else, I had 1 too. And so then we started sharing some of the other, whether it was surgeries that we had or other health conditions that we had, and we started kind of going, there's something here, and so we started writing them down, and we got all excited and thought, okay, we got to look at this, because sitting at this table, if you're sitting at a table of 8 people, and 4, 6, or all 8 are going, I have that, I think it's something that we need to look at. And so as we started to look more at this and started to get more excited about it, we thought, no, there's definitely some work that needs to be done here. I think it only makes sense. If you think about all the work we put into understanding the brain of individuals with FASD, does it not make sense to think, obviously the alcohol is going to affect the bones, the muscles, the tissues, the joints, and the development of them? It would make sense, would it not? So why aren't we looking at that? We look at the behaviors because of the brain, but what about the behaviors because of the physical issues? And so we want to look at FASD as a full body diagnosis. This is exciting because I think it gives us another opportunity to start to have that conversation. As we've heard today, there's a lot of shame and blame when it comes to FASD, so how do we get past that? Well, here's one of the answers, is to start to look at this as physical issues. We're not looking at it as, oh, this happened, and so the reading might be slow. We're looking at it as, there's some health issues we need to pay attention to here, just like you would with anyone else. So going forward, this was something that I was very excited about, was understanding the full body diagnosis. We've heard in adverse childhood experiences, things like attachment disorder. Well, as you hear today, for me, the only thing attachment disorder I'm looking at is my hip that won't stay attached. So we're going to look at more of the physical issues, and that was my passion and desire to start this survey. I'm going to pass it on to CJ and Emily, who will share their passion and desire of why they wanted to do the survey. But before we do that, I'm just going to give you a list of some of the physical problems that I personally experience. Now, this is in addition to the brain issues that I have, okay? Partial FAS was the diagnosis that I received when I was younger. 4 pounds, 15 ounces at birth, and that was full term. Microcephalopathy, low weight to height, high arched palate, bifidula, uvula, wow, I said that wrong, sorry. Heart murmur, micronathia, retronathia, flat feet, hip dysplasia, scoliosis, generalized muscle weakness, low tone and bulk, hypermobility of joints, bowed knees, camptodactylity, all the dinosaurs, brachydactyly, ocular weakness in right eye, right intention tremors, facial decreased muscle mass, prominent sternocostal margin, malar flattening, liptomas, hernia, sleep disorder, arthritis in ankles, knees, hips, degenerative aging disease in my neck, bone spurs in my elbows, and plantar fasciitis. So those are just some of the physical issues that we're looking at. All right, CJ.
Hi. The reason I wanted to do the survey, it kind of mirrors Myles, is we were sitting around and we were comparing all the stuff we had in common. And the thing that struck me is none of us were geographically in the same place. None of us were the same age. We were all under 40 at the time, and we were all different genders and different ethnicities, and we have no genetic relation. So given all that, the one thing we all did have in common was FASD. And that was really an exciting thing. Well, not exciting, but it got you thinking. So I will now list my health issues in addition to the brain issues I have. Full fetal alcohol syndrome, I was diagnosed in infancy. I weighed 2 pounds and 9 ounces in a full-term pregnancy. I have microcephaly, I had seizures as a baby. I had bilateral rotation deformities, both femurs, and I was repaired at 11 years old. I have micronathia and ophthalmia, phalangeal tapering in both hands, growth retardation, short stature, low weight to height, umbilical hernias multiple and repaired several times, a high arched palate. I'm missing 8 adult teeth because I never had them. I have flat feet, abnormal palmar creases in both hands, myopia, chronic dislocating joints, knees, shoulders due to hypermobility of joints starting at age 12. Generalized low muscular tone, visual motor integration disorder, balance and coordination issues, a developmental coordination disorder in childhood, problems with temperature regulation, hypertrophic scarring, very high pain tolerance, significant sensory issues, hypoglycemia, cartilage grinds and crunches with movement, joints lock and make noise, joints swell and ache with use due to weather changes and overwork, chronic sinusitis, ear infections, chest infections, chronic pneumonia as a child, irritable bowel syndrome, anxiety disorder, who wouldn't, and sleep disorder.
You know, one of the most difficult parts of my journey has been those who do not believe me. They do not believe that I face hardships cognitively, behaviorally, emotionally, socially, and the one, of course, we're focusing on here today is physically. Because I can look and present as quote-unquote normal, whatever that truly means, they do not believe that, you've heard all of these things that they have listed, they don't believe that I have those issues. Obviously, I have the brain issues, but just some of the physical things that I would like to tell you about, because it is invisible, are I was diagnosed with fetal alcohol syndrome at 1 year of age. I was failure to thrive, and I scored exceedingly low on my APGAR test, both 1 minute and 5 minutes after birth. At 1 year of age, I weighed as much as a newborn. At 3, I looked like I was 1. I had chronic ear infections, and I had tubes in my ears so many times. Hearing deficiency, well, of course, expect that. Bronchial asthma, supraventricular tachycardia, or SVTs, that's just a fast heart rate. And then I have another misfiring of the heart that has since been undiagnosed, and I hope there are some cardiologists here in this room today. A hiatal hernia, severe scoliosis, growth hormone deficiency, hypoglycemia, insomnia, chemical seizures of the brain, a tumor in the throat, sensory integration issues, cyst on the kidneys, carcinoma in situ, gastrointestinal issues, tearing of fascia and ligaments. My joints easily pop out of place. I was cross-eyed as a child, and I did have facial deformalities, but I grew out of those. And of course, the astropia was one of those that I grew out of. Gluten intolerance, frequent migraines, and a daily headache. I haven't gone a single day without having some sort of headache. Chronic fatigue, and I do lose weight very easily, and it's hard for me to keep my weight up. I'm constantly eating to try to maintain that. I'm not complaining about that, though.
All right, thank you. So as you can see, we're sharing from some personal perspectives because this is what we're going through every day, right? And not just the three of us. So let's get ready and get started on this survey here. We're going to, as we said, review some of the highlights from the survey. Okay, so we want to get the information on how the survey started and what we need to do first. And some of the things we need to look at first were who responded to the survey. We had 356 responses back to the survey, which was, completed surveys. We had many more that were partially completed, but completed surveys that we'll be reporting on were 356. That's a very awesome number. Super excited about that. Now, the average age was 28.1 years of age. So the people that took the survey, average age, 28 years old. Now, we will be repeating this throughout because that is something that is unbelievable to look at, that the things that we'll be talking about that we're dealing with average age being 28 years old, you should not be dealing with a quarter of the things that we'll be listing. The other thing that we need to take note of is that through the surveys that were handed back, no one was over the age of 62, okay? As you can see here, the gender population was about half and half for male and females. One of the questions that we asked is, do you have a family doctor or nurse practitioner? Now we came back with, there was 84% of individuals who had a family doctor and 17.2% that had a nurse practitioner. Now, why is this important? Well, because this shows that the diagnoses such as hip dysplasia, scoliosis, and other things are legitimate. This means that they did go to the doctor and they did get the tests done, so it does show that they do have these things that we'll be listing. And again, that will be listing for these people on the average age of 28. We had a section in there that asked for your diagnosis, and we listed a couple of them, which were FAS, partial FAS, ARND, and FAE. Now, we also asked for other alcohol-related diagnoses that people might have that were not listed there. And it was a good thing that we did, because we had many people respond with things that we didn't have listed. And the things that they responded back with were things such as FASD, atypical, FASD, FAS atypical, and neurobehavioral disorder, PAE. Now, each respondent was asked to supply the name of the physician and the clinic that the diagnosis was done at. This was important because we wanted to make sure that we were working with people who had the diagnosis so we could confirm the stats. We didn't want it to just be suspected or maybe thinking, because we needed to have it legitimate numbers. So these are all people that have diagnoses. At this time, we will be starting the list of the stuff, and I'd like to pass it over to CJ.
Hi. The first on the list is autoimmune disorders. The general population statistic refers to 24 diseases listed by the NIH-ADCC, which is the National Institute of Health Autoimmune Diseases Coordinating Committee. The general population is 5 to 8% for all 24. The individuals with FASD is 31.6, which is 4 times higher. That's 1 in 3 people in this survey with an autoimmune disorder. The reason we asked about these 10 is because we each knew somebody who had 1 or more of these. Statistically, we shouldn't know even 1 person with them, but we knew many. We listed 10 of them, but the ones we're going to focus on today are celiac and Crohn's disease, are both 4 times higher in the survey population. These are particularly hard to deal with if you have the additional diagnosis of FASD and everything that we know about how hard it is from day-to-day living. For example, celiac disease is a severe allergy to gluten, and gluten is found in more than just bread, so how are you supposed to navigate that? So for rheumatoid arthritis is exceedingly debilitating for anybody, and we are 12 times higher for rheumatoid arthritis. I personally find that unacceptable, especially when the average age is 28.1. We are in the prime of our life, and we have rheumatoid arthritis. So, for the immune problems, again, it doesn't look like much, 3 and 2 times higher, but it is. Chronic is defined as 3 or more times a year. We asked 13 items in the immune category, and we're reporting on the following 3. There are 2 up here, but there's going to be 1 later. Roughly, can you? Okay, so this is the big stat here. I'd like to draw your attention. Roughly 70% have had an ear infection, and 35% have had chronic ear infections. So what we're looking at here is, has everybody watched the movie Jaws? Yep. And Brody sees the shark for the first time and says to Quinn, "We're going to need a bigger boat." Yeah? This is that number. We're going to need a bigger boat for this. And what I want to know about the ear infections is, are the ear infections related to the bone development? Because we know that alcohol affects the bones in the body, and we have bones in our ears. And in turn, is it related to the hearing loss that Emily will focus on later? Okay, that's that. And now off to allergies. Everybody's had them. Everybody hates them. But here it is, the EpiPen is the EpiPen and asthma were 4 times higher in the survey population. But the thing is, for 4 times higher in the general population to carry an EpiPen is massive. There's a significant amount of people out there with a life-threatening allergy. And given the executive functioning issues that, again, Myles will focus on later, how many of those are required to carry an EpiPen actually do? How many of them have not lost them? And how many of them would recognize an allergy reaction in time to use it? And given the anxiety that happens, would they be able to use it appropriately? Now I'm going to hand this over to Emily to talk about hearts.
We asked about 13 different things when it came to heart issues, and I just want to reiterate once again that whenever you're developing, you develop down the line. And so whatever area of the brain is developing at the time, there's a organ system that is developing at the same time. So again, it's not just a brain issue, it's a whole body issue. The average age of the individual that responded to our survey was 28.1 years of age. So just think about that age when we talk about the congenital heart defects being 7 times higher and child heart surgery being 15 times higher. So if they had surgery when they were a child, what is that going to look like as an adult? And there were also 8 other rare heart defects that were reported. 8 rare heart defects, 356 respondents, and we saw extraordinarily rare heart defects reported. That should have never happened in a general population survey, but we saw that here. Okay, so with hypertension, with high blood pressure, 2 times higher, again, average age of 28, high blood pressure 2 times higher. And what about SVTs, supraventricular tachycardia, at 27 times higher? Look at the yellow people, 27 times higher. I have supraventricular tachycardia. I remember one time I was walking down my high school and I was walking from class to class and I could just feel the heat sensation rushing up my neck. And of course I didn't know what that meant. I just knew I was getting very, very faint. I was going to pass out, and I go to sit down. And this happened over and over and over again. And of course, it always happened on my way to PE. And my PE teacher, she was like, "You're just trying to skip PE, aren't you?" I was like, "I swear I would rather skip PE, and I don't want to do it this way, though." And so I went to a cardiologist, and I wore a heart monitor for a week. And at rest, actually, as a matter of fact, when I was sleeping, my heart got up to 180 beats per minute. So if you can imagine someone who has executive functioning issues and they're not registering what is happening to them, can you get to a defibrillator in time? SVTs can be very, very serious if you're not able to vaguely stimulate your heart back into rhythm, or you're not able to get to a defibrillator. Again, 27 times higher. What is that all about?
Okay, thank you. Okay, so I'd like you to look at the little cat. This is pretty much sums up our thing, especially when we commiserate with somebody older about our bone problems, and they're like, "Oh, you're too young. You can't join this club." So we asked about 36 different things. Of the 36 different things you chose to report on, these are the ones reporting on. Okay, we can click it. So scoliosis. I personally do not have scoliosis, but I am sitting with two people who do, and two people who find that dealing with it is incredibly rough. It can interfere with many things, including your heart, because the back will press along the ribs and will press along your heart, and then that's not working right. And we're 7 times higher for that. That's, again, not acceptable, but this is what's happening. We're 2 and 3 times higher for the joints to swell and to make noise. We do not have a statistic for dislocating joints because it's never followed, but I can tell you they're a pain in the butt. For osteopenia and osteoporosis, again, we don't have general stats because the average age is 28.1, and the general population data is only available for those over 50 years old. We're not 50, we're not 40, and we're getting osteopenia and osteoporosis. What's that going to look like in 10 years? How are we going to function? Again, the magic number is 28.1, and we're 4 times higher for osteoarthritis and gout. And we're 10 times higher for gout. Again, this is an older person's form of arthritis, and we're getting it at the average age of 28. So, along with everything else, the balance is an issue because if the bones are not formed properly and the muscles to the bones are not formed properly, and we need those to keep balance, 53% of the individuals reported balance issues. I know I have balance issues. I can't ride a bike. I've tried. It doesn't work. But I'm 32, and people are like, "Oh, come on, you can ride a bike." Well, no, I can't. I'm 32. I can't ride a bike. And usually it's a joke amongst people, "Oh, it's easiest to ride a bike." It's not. So it's a little embarrassing sometimes. I also have trouble with ladders. I can go up about a 4-foot ladder, and that's about it. If you ask me to pass something down to you, that's not going to happen. Because I can't balance enough on the ladder to do something else. And at this time, I would like to actually tell you all about my dislocation. This is where we tell our stories. My knees have been dislocating since I've been 12. And this time, it didn't go back in. And I sat on the side of the road and waited for the ambulance for an hour, and they picked me up. And then they brought me to the hospital where my mom was waiting, and the paramedic said, you don't act like you have FAS. Okay, I didn't know I was excluded because I dislocated my knee. And the thing is, my joints aren't getting any better. They're just getting worse. And I have a very physical job. And I want to know what's going to happen in my future for my mobility and my independence. I walk everywhere. I can't drive, but I want to know what's going to happen in my future if this continues. Now I'm going to turn it back to Emily for vision.
I just invite you to look at the column on the far right, the 7 times, 11 times, 10 times, and 2 times higher. Vision issues. What does that look like? So if you're one of those people that when you wake up in the morning and you're completely blind as a bat, as they say, okay, you can put your glasses on, you can put your contacts in, that's wonderful. But if you're a young adult, and again, going back to those executive functioning issues, are you going to forget your glasses at home? Are you going to not remember to go and pick up a new prescription of contacts? What does that look like? And looking at the strabismus esotropia, which is the cross-eyed, and the strabismus exotropia, which is the wall-eyed. So if you look at the general population stats, and you see that the strabismus esotropia, the cross-eyed, or excuse, I'll look at the wall-eyed is actually 2 times higher than the cross-eyed. But then look at individuals with an FASD according to our survey, and it's flipped the other way around. That's an interesting stat right there. I wonder, again, what does that mean? Can some of you research that for us, please? We want to know. We want to know the answers. And again, I actually was cross-eyed when I was born. I wish I had a big picture on my iPad. I could prove to you that I was. And I never really understood why I was until I started looking at this. I said, maybe it has a lot to do with this, more so than what I originally thought. And hearing loss as children. Just look at that. Do I really need to say anything? 75 times higher. So if you have hearing loss as a child, are you going to regain that as an adult? More than likely, it's just going to get worse. I can attest to that. I do have a few hearing deficiencies myself. So I always like to describe when sound in this way. Of course, it's going to travel at different frequencies. So the faster the frequency, it's going to get to your ear quicker. The slower the frequency, slower, obviously. But what happens in a neurotypical or non-affected brain is the brain is able to put those 2 sounds together correctly. And you're able to hear syllables and words correctly. However, in an affected brain, then we are not able to put those 2 different frequencies together correctly a lot of times. But here's the interesting thing, your brain still wants to hear words. So you can hear completely nonsensical sentences, and I wish I had a really funny story to tell you about one of those sentences right now, but I just can't think of one. And another thing is sometimes we're only able to catch 1 out of every 3 words. And so what does that look like? Are you not able to understand what's being told to you, or really can you just not hear it? Because I know from my personal self, I'll look at you and I'll smile really big and I'll shake my head. Because I get so tired of saying, I'm sorry, do what? I still didn't hear you.
Okay, this is me again, and this is the last bit that I'm doing, so you don't have to worry about. Okay, so we asked 9 things of the endocrine disorder, and we're going to focus on the 3. The 2 diabetes ones is very interesting. We're 6 times higher for type 1 diabetes. Now, I'm going to list some of the complications due to type 1 diabetes. Heart disease, kidney disease, blindness, difficulty with wound healing that leads to amputation due to infection, poor circulation. These things can happen if type 1 diabetes is not properly cared for. Again, if you have a diagnosis of FASD, are you going to be able to remember, oh, I need insulin? Oh, I should probably eat. Oh, well, I don't know how long I've had that cut there. That can lead to very serious problems, and most often it's overlooked, and you end up in an emergency room. Now, back to the big boat. Hypothyroidism, or thyroid disorders. We've listed 3. And for hypothyroidism, it's 1 in 60, or 1 for every 160 of adults with FASD. Again, I'm going to list some of the symptoms of thyroid disease, and I'm going to ask if they sound familiar. Can't concentrate, depression, osteopenia and osteoporosis, your bones hurt, you have gastric acid reflux or heartburn, you have high blood pressure, recurrent headaches, heart palpitations and arrhythmias, sensitivity to temperature, either sensitivity to hot or cold, weight loss despite eating, restless anxiety and sleeplessness, and muscular weakness. These are just some of the few symptoms of thyroid disorder. But what we want to know is, would this number be higher if everybody was tested? It's a hormone release, your thyroid. And again, if things in your brain and your body are affected by the alcohol, then most likely your thyroid would be affected too. Now back to Emily with reproductive systems.
Obviously, when we start discussing hormonal issues, it can mean a whole lot more than just, as a female, our personal body, but what does that look like if we're trying to carry to full term as well. But if we look at the numbers, and we look at the 6 times higher for both premature menopause and recurrent miscarriages, that's devastating. I mean, this is kind of, we keep talking about, we don't want to see these numbers, but it's fact. And it's almost a medical crisis to some degree. We keep wanting to reiterate that. And we did ask about 12 different things when it came to the reproductive system. And I do believe one of the presenters have already discussed the fact that it speeds up the reproductive process, and we do go into early menopause. And hot flashes and night sweats, I can attest to the night sweats. They started not too long. I'm 25 years old. I'm like, dang it, what does this mean? Teens. We had 10 teens report to having night sweats. 8 in their 20s and 11 in their 30s. Night sweats and hot flashes. Teens, 20s, and 30s. We talk about a biological clock that's ticking. Well, if you're 25 years old like I am, oh, mine is ticking really, really fast.
So other health problems. We asked about 24 other health issues, and we'll be reporting on 8 of these. Let's start off with dementia, early onset dementia. Now, early onset dementia is defined as beginning before the age of 64. Again, we're looking at people, the average age being 28. 81 times higher. That's ridiculous. There's no way people in the average age of 28 should be getting early onset dementia. It's unbelievable. We also looked at hypoglycemia, heartburn, irritable bowel syndrome, and migraine headaches. Now, when we're talking about hypoglycemia, we're not talking about diabetes. We're talking about hypoglycemia in the fact where you're sitting there and things are okay, and then all of a sudden, I'm like, oh, I'm really hungry. Oh darn. I don't even have the energy to get up and walk 10 feet to the kitchen to get food. I've just lost all my energy. I'm extremely tired. And don't talk to me because I'm a little bit irritable, but I need food right now because my blood sugar has dropped. I'm shaky. Not the best person to be around, but I need that help and support. And if you don't understand that, it just looks like, oh, you're just being grumpy. Just go eat. We also looked at early weight loss, hard to gain back, hard to gain weight, and obesity. Now, if you look at the obesity, this is actually one of the, I believe it was about 2 things that we had come back that were lower in our population. Now, some of you may have attended the session yesterday with Dr. Osman where they were talking about sleep and medication. And if I'm not mistaken, which I hardly ever am, but then I don't remember things, so. They did talk about medication and how that can alter weight gain, and obesity could be higher due to the wrong medication, right? Or due to medication, period. We're talking about obesity here being lower in our population. Now, with the hard to gain weight, again, 32 times higher. It's a huge number. It's a lot of little people, as what was said before. If it's hard to gain weight, it may seem like that's an okay thing for some people. As Emily was saying, well, it's, at least it keeps me thin and pretty, right? As a guy, it's the opposite. I always get the, oh, you're so skinny, you should eat. Trust me, I try to remember to eat, but I forget to. And even when I do, I still can't gain that weight. That really, for me, plays on my self-esteem quite a bit, right? So remembering how these things play out and how they may look. Not only are they painful, hard to deal with, but they're affecting us every day.
Seizures, 21 times higher. And there were several types of seizures that were reported according to our survey. However, the most reported were, of course, the grand mal and the petit mal seizures. I do have a personal story. I have a type that may or may not have been represented on our, no, actually it was represented in our study, and that is chemical seizures of the brain, unrelated to mental health, such as schizophrenia or something similar. And when I was younger, I would have audio and visual hallucinations due to the chemical misfiring in the brain. And in fact, I just feel like giving this number just because it's so personal, I believe that our final number was 21% of our individuals there were 21% of individuals with an FASD that reported on our study that had chemical seizures of the brain too. No? Just kidding. Ignore that, please. Maybe I just want it to be that for the chemical seizures too, so I have a fellow buddy that we can share scary stories with. No, but if you can just imagine trying to explain that to family members, you're going to look crazy. Yes, I do have schizophrenia in my background, and my mother was that way, and my brother and uncle, but it is not schizophrenia. It was chemical misfiring of the brain, and part of the reason I know that for a fact is because when I was about 11 or 12, grew out of them, stopped having them. I don't know, is it something to do with the pruning, the myelinization? What is it? I'm not entirely sure. I'm sure there's a study out there, but I'd love to have someone look into that. But 21 times higher for seizures. And again, these are seizures you're not going to grow out of. Mine I did. These, like the ones largely reported here, you're not. My brain is like having 5,000 tabs open and 3 radio stations playing, all at the same time, all the time. I kind of liken it to it being almost like a filing system. A lot of us can put the files neatly in an order in the filing cabinets, but for us it's almost as if the files have been opened, the files have been strewn across the floor, there we go, and we're just trying to get to the files. We're just trying to retrieve them. And I want to ask kind of a really dumb question here. Can anyone just throw out a number as how many senses do we have? How many do you think we have, senses? 7.
5 sense organs, 7 senses.
7, woo! Okay, I'm hearing an 8, hearing a 7, I heard a 5. Well, when we're in 2nd grade, we learn about the 5 basic ones, right? We learn about our taste, our sound, our touch, our smell, our hearing, all of those things. But someone said 7, so 2 more that I can add on top of that, of course. You got it? Yeah, he's talking about, you're talking about.
The pressure sense, or say, temperature, hot and cold.
Yes. Yes, he's talking about pain sense and hot and cold. But another one is our sense of gravity. and our sense of where we are in time or space like an internal GPS unit. So imagine all of this empirical data bombarding us at once. Well, a neurotypical brain is able to habituize some of that empirical data, right? You're able to forget about the tag on the back of your sweater that's itchy. You're able to forget about the fact that you're hungry. You're able to habituize to those things. But for an affected brain, we can't tune all of that out. It's too much empirical data coming at us at once. And so either what happens is we become overwhelmed, or we become catatonic or flat affect, or we completely tune it all out. Or, oh yes, or have a panic attack and blow up. I've done it. So again, talking about some of that data that's coming at us. Cannot tolerate bright light and easily overwhelmed. Of course, we're not going to have general stats on that. We actually asked about 21 different things when it comes to sensory, but the reason we want to focus here on the cannot tolerate bright light and easily overwhelmed is, what does that look like when you're trying to get health care? Are you wanting to go to a lab and get reports? Do you want to sit in a hospital with all of those smells and all of those things? And of course, right now, this bright light, I know I'm going to have a migraine afterwards for sure. But the hospital lights are bright, the smells, all of these things. And cannot tolerate loud noise, 11 times higher. For me, I can't go to sporting events. It's just, I can't do it. It is too much, again, too many things coming at me at once. The noise particularly gets to me. I have at times, believe it or not, even cried because I couldn't, it was just so overwhelming. I would plug my ears, close my eyes, and I'd still find myself crying. And I was like 19 years old. What 19-year-old is going to cry at a game? It was kind of embarrassing. Someone thought I was just trying to get out of the sporting event because I don't like basketball, which is true. But I honestly just could not handle it. Again, continuing on with smell and with taste, 9 times higher, 7 times, 55, 2 times higher. Okay. Those are massive numbers right there. When you're talking about times higher, 1 times higher is large, right? But when you're talking about 55 times higher for an acute sense of smell, again, when you're in a hospital and, for instance, in a surgery room, the smell of bones, most people cannot tolerate that. But if you're extremely sensitive to smell, you're not going to want to seek out healthcare. You want to get out of there, like I wanted to do at the basketball arena. I just wanted out of there. I left my cafeteria because I just wanted out of there. Couldn't tolerate it. And again, if you do not like taste and smell, can you take your medications? Are you able? Can you even tolerate that? High pain tolerance and low pain tolerance. 51.8% for high pain tolerance reported having high pain tolerance, and of course 37.1% reported having low pain tolerance. Okay, so if you have high pain tolerance, for instance, I went to a therapist because they were looking at my back for scoliosis, and she was working on my back. She said, "Hey, did you know that your fascia was completely torn away in your shoulder?" Oh. No, I didn't. Oh, and by the way, it looks like the other shoulder. It looks like your muscle's getting ready to tear away there as well. Oh, I didn't know it because I couldn't feel it. I didn't understand it was happening. So again, if you're not registering the fact that something is wrong, and I know Myles has a great story for that one. If you're not registering that something, and I know CJ does too, that you're not registering that something is wrong, are you going to seek out medical help? And as you can see, it seems kind of like, and I don't want to say that it's true, but it seems kind of like our bodies are aging at a much faster rate. That's what appears to be happening. And if that is what is happening, then this is only going to accumulate and become worse and worse, perhaps on a much faster time frame. And with the low pain tolerance, if everything hurts more than usual, more than the average person, so to speak, and you're the average age of 28.1 and you're going to a doctor and you're saying, this hurts, that hurts, I can't stand up in the morning, or whatever it may be, then you're 28 years old, there's nothing wrong with you, you're just wanting pain pills. Or you're just a complainer, or you're a hypochondriac, and I'm sure that has happened to someone before. And I'll read this real quickly, the cat. So on a scale of 1 to 10, can you rate your pain at this very moment, or today as a whole, or do you mean in a specific area?
I slept great last night. Got a full 40 minutes. Unfortunately, that rings way too true for us. I'm going to talk about sleep disorders. Now, we asked about 12 different sleep problems, and we're reporting on 3 of them. The 3 being falling asleep, staying asleep, and sleep apnea. Now, if you see here, general population is average 5 to 10% for falling and staying asleep. And for us, it was 7 to 14 times higher, and then 6 to 11 times higher. And then looking at sleep apnea, it was 6 times higher in the population of those that filled out this survey. How does that affect your mental health, your day-to-day, everything? If you are not sleeping, you are not resting, but yet you're supposed to get up and function like everybody else, how fair is that? If I didn't have the opportunity to charge my brain and my body by resting it, why should I be looked at and told, you have to function like everybody else out there? It's not a choice we're making. Our bodies are not turning off, they are not sleeping. This is not something that we can necessarily control by turning an off button. Mental health. Now we asked 21 questions, and here we'll be reporting on 3 of these. Now you might wonder why we asked about mental health when we're talking about the physical issues. Well, it's because how does this affect an individual's ability for health care? We're talking about anxiety being 15 times higher, depression 27 times higher, and agoraphobia 12 times higher. Now agoraphobia is the fear of leaving the house. Is that correct, Jan? So if you are unable to leave the house because of having a fear that you can't control, how are you supposed to go out and get the medical needs that you have that need to be met? How do you go get the support out there if you can't walk out your door? You can't. So the bills are washed, the laundry is paid, the clothes are in the oven, and the last load of dinner is in the dryer. Who says I can't multitask? All right, executive functioning. Again, you might question why we are asking this when we're talking about the physical issues. Well, again, the question comes back to, how does this affect you in your ability to get health care? Now look at these numbers. They are absolutely unbelievable. Short-term memory, 79.80%. Long-term memory problems, 69.30. Problems, what? Oh, problems paying attention, 88.30. Problems making decisions, 86%. Difficulty with judgment, 80.70%. Difficulty with what is said to you, 68.80%. Difficulty understanding what you read, 68.30%. I believe it was CJ, that, I'm not sure who it was, but one of us had said that 1 times higher is higher. Twice the amount. 10 times. Look at this. Look at these percentages. 79, 88%. That's unbelievable. Last September, I moved from Alberta to Saskatoon. Right before I moved, I had gone to the doctor because I was having problems with my ear, which was nothing new. I had them since I was a child, and continue to always have them as an adult. And whenever I get sick or run down, the first thing to go is my ears. So I went to a doctor because it seemed like something was a little bit out of the norm this time. Now for me, I have quite a high threshold for pain. And so when I know something's wrong, as my parents say, this is serious, let's go. So I was like, I think something's wrong. So I went to the doctor, and we went into the room, and he looked in my ear. And I said, I'm having a little bit of ear problems, not sure what's going on. And he said, oh my goodness, you have a hole in your ear. And I said, oh, okay. And he goes, no, you have a hole in your ear. And I thought, okay, it's the wax or whatever. And he goes, the hole is so big that you cannot use a Q-tip. It will fall in. And I said, okay, not sure what I'm supposed to do about that. Now, this was in July or August of last year. Then September, I moved to Saskatoon. A couple of weeks ago, I'm sitting there going, oh, my ear's starting to act up again. This past week, I was here in Vancouver, and all of a sudden, my ear was hurting, and I felt it was almost like waves in my ear, and this ringing noise, to the point where I had to sit down because I felt like I was going to lose my balance. And I'm going, oh my goodness, something's wrong. For this last week, my ear has been completely plugged. I can't hear anything, and it's extremely painful and goes down to my jaw. Now, it might be as simple as, well, why didn't you go to the doctor? Well, because when I went to the doctor before, I can't remember what he said I was supposed to do, and I can't remember once I left if I was supposed to get medication, if I was supposed to do a follow-up, who I was supposed to call, and then I moved. So now, how am I supposed to go get a doctor? I don't know where a family doctor is. I don't know who a family doctor would be. I'm not sure what I'm supposed to do, and I don't remember about my ear. We're coming up to being close to being a year that I've been dealing with this. And this isn't something new. This is constantly happening with me with my health issues, is I don't remember the steps on what to do. I don't know what it is I'm supposed to ask, and I don't understand what they're telling me. That is all executive functioning issues that I'm having. So how does that play out in my health care? I'm walking around with a hole in my ear. It's been a rough week with my whole body diagnosis, but I made it. How about you? As I said, the reasons that we started to ask these questions where we started to realize that there was a lot of things that we're having in common, just out of the three of us. And then as we started connecting with our friends and family, we started to see that there was more that we needed to look at. So we're leaving this survey open for right now. Why? Because it's very important. As you can see, there's a lot of things that we need to look at here, and there's a lot of questions that need to be answered. We aren't here telling you the answers to this. We're here asking you the questions. What are we going to do about this? Individuals with FASD, we have an opportunity to find out what's going on with us by filling out these surveys. The rest of you, we're turning around to you going, what are you going to do to help us? What are you going to do to make sure we're getting the proper health care that we need? In closing here, we just want you to know that we talk about understanding FASD, and again, like I said, we might have an opportunity here if we start looking at it as a full body diagnosis, getting past those stigmas, shame and blame. Because at the end of the day, we need support, we need help. You can see that now with those numbers. We're talking 140 times higher, 168 times higher, 28 years of age. This is ridiculous. We need help, and we need it now. If not now, when? The answer is now. Okay, so let's get it going. Let's get this stuff going here. You realize we realize the impact of this because we started asking these questions. You can make the case about anything if you just get up and start talking and asking the questions. So as the professionals of FASD, that's what we did. Thank you.